So, welcome to Sound Mind, Sound Body. I'm Izzy Naud. I'm a health and well-being coach in the electronic music, and I've been hosting these Sound Mind, Sound Body Zoom sessions since 2023. And since last year, I started receiving guests who are my colleagues in terms of health and well-being professionals in the music industry. And that can be electronic music or also music more largely. And today, my guest is Fabrice Bonniot. Fabrice is a Gestalt therapist. He trained at Gestalt-IFFP, that's in French, IFFP, holder of the European Certificate of Psychotherapy, and he's an artistic coach and a trainer in music and cultural management at IESA or IESA, Arts and Culture, a leading Paris-based school for arts, cultural entrepreneurship, and the creative industries. With deep roots in the music scene, he spent years collaborating with Radio FG's founder, Henri Maurel, which I also had the pleasure to meet, and served on the board of TECHNOPOL, the historic French advocacy group for electronic music. So that's how we met with Fabrice back in 2006 at TECHNOPOL. I was also on the board. And Fabrice was a former DJ and artistic programming consultant. And as such, he worked closely with cultural institutions to build bridges between audiences and emerging art movements. He also has a solid background in marketing and communication within the creative industries, particularly music, film, video games, and media, where he has developed cross-disciplinary projects at the intersection of art, storytelling, and audience engagement. Wow, and much more.
That sounds very ambitious.
So today we're going to talk about Gestalt, but first of all, I'd like to hear about your involvement in the French electronic music scene. Can you tell us a bit about your early journey?
Sure. If I want to be fully honest, I think it started during my studies. So, as probably you understood through the introduction of Isabel, it seems like I've had different lives in one life because I've changed many times business and path. And my initial journey was in marketing and communication. So I studied in international business school, and I wasn't so much into business and commerce, but there was something I was really interested in is inside the program of the business school I chose. There was this concept of spending 2 years abroad. So I'm initially born in Paris. I'm a French citizen, and the idea was I could spend 1 year in the UK and 1 year in Germany, and that was what was really interesting for me. So the year I was in the UK, I was on the Oxford campus, but every weekend I was taking actually the bus to go to London, to go to the club scene of London. So we're talking about 1991, 1992. And guess what was happening in the club scene at that time? House music. So this is how I discovered house music. So I went to Heaven, I went to Ministry of Sound, I went to lots of different clubs. So many of them have disappeared, but back then there was such a vivid scene, and house music represented for me a notion of liberty. It was so fresh, and it was also an invitation actually to connect to people while you were dancing. It was a place for socializing. It was humanity for me. So this is how I started actually, and for me that was an invitation actually to dig deeper. I was more a pop kid when I was a teenager. I was spending most of my time listening to the new wave of the 80s, the electro funk, the beginning of hip hop. And arriving in London, that was a shock. So house music was something totally different. And 1 year after, I was studying in Berlin. So guess what? Again, I discovered techno music. So I went to the former eastern side of Berlin, to Tresor, Ewerk, and I was another shock. So, I mean, these were the two pillars that probably forged a big part of my personality. So house and techno gave me a kind of new start. I thought, okay, I want to I want to really push this music, these aesthetics, and the culture it was associated to. So when I started to work with Virgin Retail in London, I was really enthusiastic about really creating connection with electronic music professional and artists. And when I went back to Paris, so that was at Orange. So this is where we had the same connection with you, Isabelle, and with my brother Gregory, who is attending tonight. I was working for the marketing and communication department of the mobile branch. And this is when I started to set up collaborations, partnership with electronic music. And in 1998, I had the opportunity to start working on the branding of a new service called MobiCart, which is still actually operating under Orange nowadays. And MobiCart was mainly targeting young people. So along with my brother, we had this idea to create opportunities to use electronic music in a smart way. I mean, not just for exploiting electronic music, but to create connections, artistic and communication connection with the scene. And as you know, Isabel, this is when I started connecting with Technopol, because in 1998, this is an important year in France. This was actually the very first edition of the Techno Parade, so one of the biggest European street parade. And that was the start. So this is how I connected, and through that collaboration, I also had the opportunity to meet the people of Radio FG, who back then was already a very important player in the electronic music scene, because it was really highlighting and democratizing electronic music along with Radio Nova. So um, I became friends with Henri Maurel, the founder, Antoine Baduel, with the actual CEO, and we thought of creating lots of different opportunities. And I think we helped probably slightly the democratization of electronic music in France.
Yes, well, thank you so much for that. That
Slightly.
was very much needed because back in 98, that's when Laurent Garnier received the Victoire de la Musique. And that was the
Yes,
first
absolutely.
time that there was a prize for electronic music in France. And that was like something significant for our scene.
Definitely. 1998 was a turning point for that, because there was a kind of official academic recognition of such an impressive, prominent figure like Laurent Garnier. And it was also, there was lots of debates at that time around, rave parties and free parties a few years later. And at that time, if you remember, the electronic music scene was very much marginalized. I mean, there were so many cliches about the artist. We didn't even name professionals because there were not so many professionals in electronic music scene. Everyone was more a kind of DIY artist, promoter, organizer, but there was no really a professional way to work in that scene. So this is when we must actually pay tribute to the role of Technopol, because they really advocated for that scene. They really showed that it was not just a subculture of marginal people, that they were contributing to new aesthetics, to a new way of partying, and they were also presenting it in a professional way, that the people who were going to rave parties and the clubs, they were not pirates. They were people who were actually discovering a new way of enjoying both these aesthetics and culture. And Technopol has contributed actually to this professionalization of the electronic music scene. And I joined them in 2005 because I was still in the Orange group. I was working in different branches. After the mobile branch, I went to the internet portals. So I was collaborating with the music labels, the distributors. I was also part of a startup, a very interesting startup, creating one of the first electronic music websites in France back then. So it was named dailysound.com. It was very avant-gardist. I mean, this was the time of the internet startups, so everything was possible. It didn't last very long because, I mean, a few years later, money was running out. But it was a very exciting time where you had the opportunity to create new type of adventures. And when I joined the Technopol board in 2005, that was another turning point for me because I wanted to be part also of the Technopol adventure, to really find ways to help the professionalization. So I was more in charge of creating um, training programs, collaboration with brands, co-curating the Paris Electronic Week, which was actually a new fair for electronic music profession, and which is still on. By the way, the edition is still taking place this year at the end of this week, from Thursday to Sunday evening. So it was a time where we could really uh, challenge the way music professionals were working, and we wanted to show that electronic musicians and professionals could be part of that system with their own ways.
Interesting. Wow. And so, at what point did you feel the call to a transition from the music and cultural sectors to the field of psychotherapy?
Okay, so that's another story. Um, Around the same time when I joined the board of Technopol, you need to cut me, Isabel, because I can talk a lot. And half an hour is not enough. So I don't want to get you bored. Around the same time, I was offered two possibilities I didn't think would happen. The first one, I was offered to become a DJ, and that was not on my plan. And I was offered to, I was offered to do it within 1 week to actually perform for quite a big electronic music festival in Corsica called Calvi and the Rocks.
Yes,
How
I
did it happen? In 2005, so I was friends with Henri Maurel, the founder of Radio FG, and also with Christophe Vix, who is also a very prominent professional in electronic music. He was the chief editor of Radio FG in the 90s. And we worked together in the co-creation of this website, delison.com. And Henri and Christophe had lots of plans. And one of their very weird plans was to create a kind of co-DJing duo, you know. Henri didn't know the technique. He was more into curating playlists because he had a fantastic music culture, spanning from techno to baroque music. He was as much in electronic music as in classical music. Such a weird mix, but that was Henri. He was very avant-gardist. And Christophe was the DJ. He knew the technique. And I remember it was early June 2005, or no, end of June 2005, and Henri called me one night and he said, "We have a fantastic opportunity. We're going to open for the Calvi and the Rocks edition in 1 week." Wow, well done, bravo. Yeah, but we have a big problem is that Christophe can't make it because he's taken another project. Oh, too bad. Yeah, but you have to replace him. Yeah, but come on, I've never DJ. How do you want me to do it? Well, you have 1 week to learn. And this is how it started. Well, I could have refused, honestly, but I thought it was so exciting, actually. So I did it. And this was the beginning of a series of DJ experiences that was really thrilling, challenging, learning. And this is how actually I met the founders of the school where I'm currently teaching, IESA Arts and Culture. And when I met actually the founders, they were very enthusiastic about electronic music, even though they didn't know anything about it, because initially the school is into art heritage, art market. but they say, okay, you should start teaching history of electronic music in the school. And also, I also accepted the challenge. So that was another opportunity for me to create something different. And why do I mention that? It's because a few years later, I was offered actually to expand the field of electronic music to contemporary music, pop music, art direction in the music industry, coaching creative project, coaching musicians, and all along these opportunities to teach, to coach, I was confronted from time to time with personal issues of the artist and the professional I was collaborating with. And then I thought, okay, I don't want to do something that is not at the service of these people. So if I want to be able to deal with therapeutical issues, I need to train myself and become a therapist. And at that time, myself, I was doing a personal and a group therapy with Gestalt therapist. And I thought it was so interesting, it was so connected to the field of the arts that for me, obviously, this was the field I wanted to get a training on. So this is how I became a Gestalt therapist.
Amazing. What year is that, more or less?
That's 7 years ago when
7 years
when I
ago.
started the training. Yeah,
Okay. So for those who may not be familiar, could you describe Gestalt therapy in simple terms?
in simple terms. Okay, I'm going to try my best in a few minutes. So I would say that Gestalt therapy is a humanistic form of psychotherapy that helps people become more aware of themselves, of their feelings, and their relationships with others. You're learning who you are as a person. You discover what reduces or inhibits your feeling of happiness. You progressively discover who is your true self. You are exploring new possibilities with the therapist help. Um, and maybe to be a little bit more concrete, I can emphasize some of the key concepts of Gestalt therapy. Um, Probably the first would be awareness. Um, in Gestalt, the therapist help you become aware of what you're doing, what you're feeling, and also what you're avoiding. And we consider that healing begins when you notice what you're experiencing through your emotions, your sensation, your body language, your gestures, and even your silence. So this is the first pillar, I would say. The second one is in Gestalt therapy, there's a focus on the present moment, what we call the here and now. Um, it's less about digging into old stories from the past. It's more about leaving them again in the prison, in the present, so they can transform. Um, we don't ignore history, but we bring it into the present. We understand that the transformation happens here and now, not in abstract analysis, not in the past that is gone, and neither in the future that is yet to come, uncertain. So we really embrace what is happening in the present situation here and now in the practice. The third pillar is the relation, the contact between me as a therapist and my clients. It's not one-sided like in certain other psychotherapies. You don't have on one hand the therapist as a distant and neutral expert, and on the other hand the client as a patient. We emphasize on the relationship itself. Uh, we co-create actually what's happening in in the situation. We're creating a dialogue, and as a therapist, I'm centered on the contact with my clients, the way we meet, and the way sometimes something can be avoided between us. Issues like dependence, withdrawal, or overfusion can be seen as disturbances in the contact. And we address them. We don't address the symptom itself. We want to work to make the relationship more authentic, more flexible. Another pillar is, and probably this is something that really attracted me, is the creative experimentation because Gestalt is really playful, it's flexible. We use experiments like enactment, role play, art, movement, dialogue with parts of self. Uh, we, we really foster on the spontaneous creativity that we all have. We don't necessarily need to be artists to be creative. Everyone has their creativity. So we're working with that. Like it becomes a lab, a laboratory of life. And the last pillar, I would say, is what we call the mind-body integration, the wholeness. Um, Gestalt actually comes from a German word, and Gestalt in German means the form, the shape, the configuration of what the client is expressing in a situation. So it refers to a kind of whole structure of pattern. We don't see people as separate parts, like you have on one hand the body, on the other hand the mind. We try to connect everything together, the sensations, the emotions, the thoughts, the imaginary world, the dreams. Uh, it's a bit like in music. Uh, when you listen to music and you perceive a melody, I mean, you don't experience it as isolated notes, but as a flowing form. I would say Gestalt therapy as something similar. We don't look as broken parts, but we try to see the person as a whole, where everything is connected. I
Great.
hope it makes sense.
Yes, that's super interesting. And it sounds like Gestalt therapy is a bit like artistic.
There are some bridges because in Gestalt we value the form of the experience, and we could use actually a kind of similar way to present it as in music, because there's rhythm, there's movement, there's expression, there are colors, um, and as a therapist, and I think I kind of listen like a musician, uh, probably because I've always been very keen on the music language, and also when I started to DJ, I had really this ear to listen to music, and I think I listen a bit like a musician in the way that I can use actually um, metaphors, images, symbols. For me, when the client is presenting a situation that can be disturbing, um, I kind of vibrate to what the client is telling me. I can observe within myself a kind of living scene, where like a painting, like a performance, like a piece of music. I mean, I can really live it from the inside and then present it with my own words to the person. And probably I'm using my artistic background and connect it to Gestalt.
I can imagine that, definitely. And so let's talk about the artists in the electronic music scene. What, in your experience, are the most common emotional or psychological challenges that music artists and professionals are facing today? I think you have a
Okay.
slide or something.
Yeah, because when we prepare for today's discussion, I told you, so this question is very interesting, very relevant, but there's a lot to say. This is something that is on our research for years. So I have a slide and I will upload it now. I will share it with you to try to use plain things. I hope you can see it now.
Yes.
Okay. So so this is not a scientific research, to be very fair with you. I mean, this is This is based on my observation in my practice. This is why I see as the 10 most common psychological and emotional challenges faced by music artists, and including electronic music artists. So I will start from the top clockwise. Okay, so let's start with uh, um, performance anxiety and stage fright. Um, why do I put it first? Because this concerns a lot of artists, and even highly experienced musicians can feel overwhelming fear before performing. The pressure to be flawless, the fear of judgment, and the intensity of live settings can often trigger anxiety. Uh, um, this is also related to the high expectations from fans in the industry or the fear of criticism or failure. And this is really amplified by, as you can understand, the social media feedback loops, the live streams. Um, and it has physical consequences. People can experience tremors, voice issues, sometimes panic, uh, and erosion of confidence. So, this is one key, I would say, challenge. Uh, Another challenge is related to that one, because as you can see, many of these challenges can overlap each other. This is what I call perfectionism and creative block. But not just before performing. I mean, uh, this can happen in any professional situation. This drive to make something great can paralyze creativity. And many artists internalize a harsh self-criticism, the feeling that they're never good enough, they're not doing something that is good enough. This leads to creative block, procrastination, and guilt. Um, the competitive industry standards amplify this. Uh, this contents, this constant exposure to publish uh, polished online content that is supposed to please as many fans as possible. This flawless presentation syndrome, the lack of tolerance for mistakes, so the fear to fail, that's really actually paralyzing. And what I notice, it's mainly paralyzing for creation in the studio. This is really what I observe a lot with my clients. I mean, and it generates chronic dissatisfaction. Um, the third challenge is what I call identity struggles. Um, Artists often fuse their identity with their art, thinking if my music fails, then I fail. Meaning that if I don't get that many streams, that many likes, that many comments, then I'm the failure myself, you know. And this can be destabilizing. Uh, this is also related with a fascinating question is uh, who am I as an artist, which is an existential question. Uh, this is amplified by the fear of being rejected or not being able to generate enough engagement for audiences, from critics, the fear of the cancel culture, which is a reality, and also by the push of the industry, who's really uh, asking artists to merge their personal life with their artistic persona. Because when you push to tell stories on your Instagram accounts, on TikTok, I mean, what else can you express but digging into your personal lives? And this is where the lack of boundaries can be exhausting for the artist and generate these identity struggles. Let's move on. Then we have isolation and loneliness, which can seem contradictory because you think, okay, artists are always immersed with other people. They're never alone. I mean, especially electronic music artists. I mean, when they DJ in front of thousands of people, I mean, they're immersed into a very intense atmosphere, so they shouldn't feel lonely. Yeah, but Okay, there's the high peak of the performance, high intensity, but when you go back to your hotel, you're alone. You can feel isolated, and it's sometimes even difficult for them to maintain intimate relationship. The extensive touring, the irregular schedules, time away from family and community, all of this contribute to create isolation and loneliness. So that's something important too. Um, then there's something also, we've talked a lot about it, addiction and self-medication, drugs, alcohol, uh, other compulsions like eating disorders, sex, digital consumption. They can be used to manage pressure, stage anxiety, and exhaustion. But you know how toxic the consequences can be, of course. And that's something that's probably still very on in the electronic music scene. I don't want to compare with the pop music scene, but we all know that the agenda of DJs is more intense than for pop musicians. I mean, within one weekend, I mean, you can travel between three different countries, and that's exhausting. And sometimes you need pushes in your life, and addiction can be an easy way, but with dramatic consequences. Um, so yes, that's an issue on your health, mental and physical health. Then we have financial and career instability. Income is often unpredictable. It's tied to gigs, dreams, and side work. Uh, and careers in music have phases. You can have peak moments, but you can also have fading visibility, and sometimes you're dropped by your manager or by labels. How do you cope with that? Uh, it can create lots of anxiety and can generate depression. Uh, Sometimes it feels this is something I can be confronted with some of my clients, and it can be associated to a kind of grief, you know, mourning as part of your identity, and that's something very intense too. Then you have burnout and exhaustion, which is probably one of the big evils of uh, of decades, not just in music, everywhere. I mean, there's so many cases of burnout and exhaustion, uh, touring, long studio session, irregular sleep, unstable routines, uh, the constant demand to produce digital content. Uh, all of this add pressure, and you can experience guilt if you're not dealing also with with your fan comments 24/7. But artists are not supposed to be community managers, but this is what also we require for them, you know. And if you're not affluent enough, I mean, not every artist is capable of hiring a community manager or team to deal with that. So that's a big question. Then you have something I've mentioned early, comparison and imposter syndrome. Again, this constant online pressure generate a kind of scrutiny that you have the feeling that you're living under a 24/7 microscope, you know, that you're analyzed by critics, professional, your fans. Sometimes you have to deal with hateful comments, which can be very violent. This can create chronic stress. You can struggle with compulsive checking of your accounts, with self-comparison, the fear of being irrelevant. All of this affects your mental health. Um, then, because of all of this, depending on what you experience in your early childhood, if you experience rejection or abuse, well, you can have trauma and wounds resurfacing because of all of this, because of hateful comments, because also sometimes, sadly, we still have cases of professional abusing artists in the industry. It still happens. Uh, so all of this can be very intense. If you're already in your past, you've been exposed to this kind of intrusion of abuse. And finally, yes, there's also this challenge that sometimes you can feel a kind of disconnection from joy and a creative flow because it can be difficult to balance art and commerce, creativity and business. You can feel a tension between being authentic in your creation and the push of the professional to be commercial, to create something that is appealing to the masses. How do you stay true to your art if you have to adapt to what sells? That's another big question. So I would say this is, I mean, not in a ranking. These are the 10 most challenges I would see in the music industry nowadays that really impact the health of the music artist. I hope it makes sense for you.
Yes, thank you so much. And I think that that also like covers like if do you think there that the electronic music scene has a unique relationship with mental health compared to other creative fields? Like this is like
Yes
specific.
and no. I would say yes and no. Probably 10 years ago, I would have told you, yes, there's still a difference. But now electronic music is part of the pop star system, which can be good for the artist in terms of exposure, but which means that if you're an electronic music artist, you seem actually to be confronted with these challenges. Perhaps I mentioned it at one point, addiction perhaps is more intense.
Mm,
I'm not that convinced, but maybe. Um, I would say the touring intensity can be harder if you're a DJ.
mhm,
Um, I would say the nightlife culture can maybe sometime generate disruption in what we call the circadian rhythm, or biological rhythm, because you live life at night. Sometimes you can feel disruption with your general patterns, the biological patterns. Um,
definitely. Well, thank you for this slide, and maybe we can take it off and get
oh
back.
yeah, sorry, I forgot to take it back.
And let's talk about Gestalt in action. Like, what simple practices or questions from Gestalt could artists begin using on their own so that they can deepen self awareness or support
Hmm.
their own well being? Do you have tools, practices?
Tools could sound a bit ambitious because you have really to experience Gestalts in a individual therapy session or in a group session. But okay, let me think what kind of easy to understand and easy to practice tip I could give you. I started to mention that awareness was a key concept in Gestalt therapy. So there's something that maybe you've already experienced because this is something that is now quite well spread in self-development training. Um, this is what I call the body scan. So maybe you're familiar with that, the body scan. So, for example, when you wake up in the morning or before rehearsing or performing, the idea is you take a few minutes for yourself. So you you select a place where you feel more relaxing, more at ease, where you're not going to be disturbed by someone. You close, of course, all your digital interfaces. You close your iPhone. You close your every every digital content, I would say. You close your eyes and you start actually to notice how is your breathing. And slowly you're going to scan your different body parts from toe to head. So from the bottom until I would say the head. And start noticing how are the sensations in these different body parts. And try actually to isolate in each part of your body what you experience. I mean, from your feet, your ankles, I mean, your legs, your stomach, your chest, your face, and you gradually actually move from bottom to top and try really to figure out so what kind of sensation you can feel. And also, if you can associate it to some emotions rising, Is there some fear? Is there some sadness? Or is it more anger or disgust? Or is there maybe the beginning of some joyful emotion or surprise? What type of thoughts can be running? Um, or maybe is your imagination providing some images? So I would say welcome all of this. Uh, don't try to reject them. Uh, accept them as a language that is trying to say something. Maybe for now you don't understand what it's saying, but in the end, something will gradually actually make sense, I would say. And at the end of this path, I would say would last a few minutes, uh, try to connect it with a music track, uh, either a track that you've created yourself or a music track that you know, that you like, that you feel a connection to. So try to associate all this experience with a music track, uh, so that that music track can leave a trace for you of that experience. And maybe later during the day, something will come because there's a connection between this body sonic scan experience and the music track. And you can take some notes of what you're experiencing. I don't know if it makes sense.
Interesting. Thank you. Yeah, I wrote it down, and that's very interesting. I've practiced body scans before, but other direction from head to the feet. That's interesting.
Okay.
Hmm. So to wrap up, if you could offer one message to music professionals who are struggling, what would that be?
Hmm. Um, Probably the most important message is don't stay alone. Don't stay on your own with your fears, with your doubts, with your questions. Um, because it's important actually to share this with a professional. Um, Therapy is useful. Therapy doesn't mean that you're a sick person or you're a mad person. Therapy means that there's an opportunity for you to grow, to learn more about yourself, to discover parts of you that maybe you don't see or that you avoid. Going into therapy or into coaching means that uh, you're going to take care of yourself. And for me, the key message is take care of yourself, like you're taking care of your music.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Fabrice. And where can people learn more about your work? Do you want to share?
Sure.
Like you can say it and then post it in the chat as well.
Yeah, so probably the easy way is to connect with my website. So I'm gonna write the URL.
And I'll share that in the replay notes as well.
And on my website, you also, if you're interested, it is connected to my different profiles, either on Facebook, Instagram, or LinkedIn. So it's easy actually to send me a message and ask a question or just to chat, of course.
Amazing. Well, thank you, Fabrice. We're going to stop the recording and open the space for the persons who are present with us.